So we'll talk about relationships today. So relationships in two contexts. So according to today's verse, Kashyapa Muni is talking about these two contexts. Our current existence is, in one sense, at multiple levels. That's because we are eternal souls, but we are within this material body. So we have relationships at different levels. We have relationships at the bodily level, which are horizontal relationships. And we also have relationships at the eternal level with our gurus and Krishna and so on. So how do we deal with these relationships? So at the bodily level, we could have our parents, relatives, friends, and so on. And at the eternal level, as I mentioned, we could have relationship with senior devotees, gurus, shiksha gurus, diksha gurus, and ultimately Krishna himself. So typically, I can speak for myself, what tends to happen is we wear different caps. When we are dealing with so-called non-devotees, we tend to think that we are superior to them. And when we are dealing with devotees, we tend to put on our humility cap and then tend to be very humble, and so it's different for different people. So today we'll try to understand how to unite these two, how to create a symbiosis between the horizontal relationship and the vertical relationship. So we look at it from different perspectives. First, we look at relationships at the bodily level. Then we look at relationships at the level of the guru. And then finally, we look at the relationship with Krishna. So first, let's look at how we should understand the relationship at the bodily level. So there are two ways of understanding bodily relationships. Now, what I'm going to be speaking is from the ultimate sense. So all love that we get in this world, we should look at it as if it's ultimately coming from Krishna. So all love, whether it comes from anybody, parents, relatives, friends, gurus, is ultimately a reflection of Krishna's love for us. So, and as I said, this is the ultimate reality. So what this means is, like, if we are experiencing love from someone, now how did that person come into our lives? So Krishna brought that person into our life. How is that emotion coming from that person? Krishna sanctioned that emotion as Paramatma in their heart. So this is how one way of understanding how all love in this world is ultimately a reflection of Krishna's love for us. On the other hand, all love that we offer in this world can also be seen as an expression of our love for Krishna. Usually we are told that when you find something nice, when let's say you find a beautiful flower or something, we are told that we should immediately offer it to Krishna. So why can't we offer the love that we have towards someone also to Krishna through that person? So if we have these two visions, then we are completely Krishna conscious. But if we miss that, that is the problem. So the problem arises when such love that we experience becomes disconnected from its ultimate source. If we think that we are getting this love from this person because of our bodily attachment to that person without any higher reality, that becomes a problem. So the problem arises when such love becomes disconnected from its source. So there is this famous verse. This is actually from the Pandava Gita. This is spoken by Gandhari to Krishna. And in India, this is commonly spoken. Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva, tvameva bandhu cha saka tvameva, tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva, tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. The translation: you alone are my mother. You alone are my father. You alone are my kinsman. You alone are my friend. You alone are my knowledge. You alone are my wealth. O Lord of Lords, you alone are everything to me. So this particular verse has been misinterpreted in many ways. So what does this verse actually mean? Does this verse mean that we can completely get rid of or ignore all bodily relationships? No. On the contrary, what this verse is saying is that In this world, we get love, knowledge, wealth, health, shelter, etc. from different sources. But the source of all sources is God or Krishna. Hence, we should see Krishna as the source of love that we receive from our relatives or offer to our relatives. So ultimately, there is this source of love, and we are receiving that source of love through our relatives. And when we offer love, we are offering it to Krishna through our relatives, and so on. So, this is two ways of understanding the bodily relationships. Now, let's look at a practical example of this to better understand this concept. So, how do we see Krishna's love through bodily relationships? So, the example that I want to share here is mother's milk. So, the mother, when a baby is born, offers milk to the baby for the baby's nourishment. Now, where is this milk coming from? It is Krishna's arrangement that this milk flows through the breasts of the mother to the child. The mother does not do anything special to produce this milk in her breast. So this milk is coming from Krishna through the mother and going to the child. So similarly, the right vision is that the love that we get in this world is an expression of Krishna's love for us. When we train ourselves to develop such a vision, we will reciprocate lovingly with those connected with us and not treat them in a very cold or arrogant way. But the wrong vision is if you start feeling that my sense of satisfaction, my self worth, self identity are all coming only from my body relationships. That is the wrong vision. If you just start thinking that everything that I'm experiencing is purely because of bodily relationships and nothing beyond it, that is a wrong vision. Why is that a wrong vision? What is wrong in thinking that I'm experiencing this love from this person and that is it? There's nothing beyond it. The problem with that is we tend to develop a strong emotional dependence on that relationship. And what tends to happen is because we are in this temporary world and relationships are also temporary, when the relationship breaks or there's a loss of that relationship, then we tend to suffer a lot because of that emotional dependence that we have. So, for example, if there's a disappointment in that relationship, it breaks us down. And we have seen this happen several times. People become depressed and so on. So, and then we start questioning, why did I form this relationship with this person in the first place? Why did I act like this? Why did I trust this person? And so on. Because of that strong emotional dependence that we have with this person, and we think that there's nothing beyond it. It's just this person and me. But if we have the right vision, then we have a security of a vertical relationship. We have the security blanket. We don't fall and hurt ourselves so badly. The security blanket actually protects us. Then these setbacks that happen in our horizontal relationships are not so damaging anymore because we have that protection and because we have the symbiotic relationship between the vertical and horizontal relationships. What I mean by that is through the horizontal relationships, we are able to experience the love that is coming from Krishna. So if we have the symbiotic relationship, then the vertical relationship with Krishna stabilizes our horizontal relationship. So let's move on. So the bodily relationships can be of three types. It could be pro-devotional, it could be non-devotional, or it could be anti-devotional. So let's look at the first one, pro-devotional. So this is a case, this is an ideal case where all the relatives, all our friends, everyone are pro-devotional. That means they're also devotees, or at least they are devotionally inclined. They assist or even encourage us in our practice of bhakti. This is ideal and this is easy to deal with. The next type is non-devotional. This is also not so bad because here they may not be practicing our bhakti, but they themselves are not interested in it, but they let us practice. They let us practice our bhakti without stopping us from practicing our bhakti. So this is the next category. And it is said that 60% of the time of our relations in this bodily platform belong to this particular type, non-devotional. And the last one, which is problematic, is anti-devotional. So here, what this means is that they're actively doing something to oppose our process of bhakti. So now that we have talked about these three, let's go and ask one more question. So, are all bodily relationships Maya? No, they're not. In fact, relationship itself is not Maya. Maya means that which is not. But this relationship that we have is actually real. It is the relationships and it does exist. So we cannot call it Maya. Then what is Maya? Because we are always told that bodily relationships are Maya, illusion, and so on. So what exactly is Maya? So there are two ways to understand this. One is seeing that relationship without connection with Krishna, that is Maya. That is seeing that all that there is to life is this particular relationship. There's nothing beyond it. We're just looking at the immediate, but not looking at the ultimate picture here. That is Maya. And the other way of looking at it is if the relationship drags us away from Krishna, then the relationship takes us into Maya. So these are two ways of looking at how bodily relationships are in connection with Maya. So is there a confirmation from Bhagavatam on this particular theme that we are talking? So this is Krishna himself speaking in the second canto. Rite artam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidyat atmano mayam yata basho yata tamaha. So Krishna is addressing this to Brahma, and he says, "O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, it has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, Maya, that reflection which appears to be in darkness." So, as we've been talking, if everything that we have, all our relations, if we see those relations in connection with Krishna, if we start experiencing that love as if it is coming from Krishna, as a reflection of Krishna, then it is perfect. But if we treat that bodily relationship exclusively on that platform and nothing beyond it, then that is Maya. So let's move on with some practical examples. So, how do we deal with bodily relationships from a practical viewpoint? So, of course, the Bhagavatam has answers philosophically and with some wonderful examples also. Now, let's look at this example between Vidura and Dhritarashtra. Now, if you consider life as a game of, as a card game, we are all handed an initial hand of cards. So both Vidura and Dhritarashtra were handed bad hands. Why? Because Dhritarashtra was blind and Vidura was born of a maid servant who was assisting the queens, Ambika and Ambalika. So both were handed bad hands. And both knew that they could not become kings because of these problems. One was blind and one was born of a maid servant. Vidura accepted that very easily, but Dhritarashtra found it very difficult to accept that fact. Self acceptance was not very easy for Dhritarashtra. Now let's come back to how the relationship was between both of them. Vidura was very affectionate towards Dhritarashtra. He treated him as a brother, he corrected him, he always advised him, and so on. But Dhritarashtra, on the other hand, was very attached to his son Duryodhan. So there are two things that are coming up here. One is affection and one is attachment. So we'll explore that a little bit to understand the difference. So what is the difference between affection and attachment? So let's take a couple more examples. So this was when the Pandavas were exiled, and Dhritarashtra, as always, he would go to Vidura for advice. And Vidura at that point said, "No, this is absolutely wrong. What happened? We should call them back," and so on. So Dhritarashtra got angry and he said, "I don't care for you. You should leave too. You should leave to the forest too." And Vidura left. He left to the forest. And Dhritarashtra, after some time, he felt bad that he had chastised Vidura, and he sent Sanjaya to find Vidura and bring him back from the forest. So Sanjaya found him, and at that point, Vidura could have said, I don't want to come. I don't care about him. But because of his affection for Dhritarashtra, he agreed to come back and meet Dhritarashtra again. So this is one example of affection. Now, just before the Kurukshetra war, Vidura told Dhritarashtra, stop the war, check this Duryodhan, check your son. But at that point, Duryodhan terribly insulted Vidura. He said, what does this Sudra's son know? Throw him out of the palace immediately. Let him go out with nothing except his own breath. At that point, Dhritarashtra was quiet. He did not say anything to his son because of his attachment towards his son, because of his blind attachment to his son. Even though he knew that his son was wrong, he did not want to hurt his son. And this is the blind attachment that he had. And at that point, Vidura took this as Krishna's blessings and went on a pilgrimage. He didn't take part in the war. So now let's look at these two concepts, affection and attachment. So affection is what Vidura had towards Dhritarashtra, and attachment is what Dhritarashtra had towards Duryodhana. So what is affection? So affection means if to correct the other person when needed, which is what Vidura was doing to Dhritarashtra. He would correct him when Dhritarashtra was wrong. He would be very straightforward. This is something that you're doing wrong, and this is something that you have to correct, and so on. But Dhritarashtra, on the other hand, never corrected Duryodhana. Attachment means never to hurt the other person and accept everything from the other person. So this was the mistake that Dhritarashtra made. Because he was blinded by attachment, he just took whatever Duryodhana said as it's okay. I'm not going to hurt my son. He's my son. This is my bodily attachment, and this is it. So the other way is that attachment can pull the other person up if it is taken in the right way. If Dhritarashtra had taken the advice that Vidura gave him in the right way, it could have pulled him up. But he never took the advice that Vidura gave him. On the other hand, material attachment can pull us down. Lastly, affection leads to healthy horizontal relationships, making it strong. On the other hand, attachment leads to emotional dependence, something that we talked about in the first slide. So this emotional dependence is actually very harmful for us, and it can actually make us weak, because if something happens to that relationship, we break down. So now we have talked about bodily relationships. Now let's talk about the next level, our relationship with Guru. Now, before we talk about Guru Ashraya, I just want to talk a little bit about how fortunate we are. So in every life and in every species, we get the relatives, we get mother, father, and so on. But it is extremely rare to get a guru. And it is even more rare to get a bona fide guru in a bona fide sampradaya. Also, whenever the word guru is used in our scriptures, interestingly, in most cases, you will find the word fortunate also used. Let's take one example. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavana Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela. So this verse, we see the word Guru and we also see the word Bhagyavan. Bhagyavan means most fortunate. So there are several verses where you can find the same thing, that the word Guru is there, and another synonym of fortunate or Bhagyavan exists. Now, as we see, even as human, first of all, it's very rare to get a human birth. And even as humans, when we see around us, how many of the humans that we know have connection with the Guru or relationship with the Guru? So we are extremely fortunate. Now, why are we so fortunate? Because the Guru is like a powerful magnet. Now we have a lot of desires. So all our desires are scattered like small iron filings. The Guru gives the focus to our desires. Not only gives the focus, he purifies those desires and ultimately takes us to Krishna And the Guru is also the transparent via media of Krishna's mercy. We can experience Krishna's mercy through the Guru. And whenever we have to approach God, there has to be a Guru involved. And this we see in several examples. For example, in Dhruva Maharaj's story, Dhruva Maharaj meeting Narad Muni. Dhruva Maharaj wanted to approach the Lord, Vishnu, but Narad Muni interjected and tested him. So the Guru came first, the Guru got involved, tested the disciple, and then led him to Krishna. And even in Gaur Leela, we see when several devotees approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly, he sent those devotees who approached him to Guru. He immediately said, go take shelter of Swarup Damodar, who represented Guru Tattva. So now let's look at one example of Srila Prabhupada's affection and a disciple's attachment. Some of you may have heard this, just repeat it for my own purification. So this is the relationship between Srila Prabhupada and Hayagriva Prabhu. So Hayagriva Prabhu was born on September 2nd, 1940 as Howard. Now it is interesting that the same Jaladuta that Srila Prabhupada came to the US, it was on that same Jaladuta while going back to India, the two American boys went on that ship. The two American boys were Keith and Howard, and they were in search of a guru. So they went to India in search of a guru. Of course, they spent about 6 to 8 months in India looking for a guru, and they fell sick, they got malaria, typhoid, and they met a lot of bogus gurus. So they were very disappointed with their trip to India. So eventually they came back to meet Srila Prabhupada in the Bowery. So they saw this saffron clad devotee, and they immediately asked, they ran to Srila Prabhupada and said, Swamiji, are you from India? Prabhupada said, yes, I'm from India. How do you know? They said that we just went to India, we couldn't find a guru, we are back here, and so on. Then Prabhupada said, don't worry, I have classes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays just around the corner at 26 2nd Avenue. Why don't you start attending those classes? And not only that, Prabhupada even took them and showed them 26 2nd Avenue and said, this is the place where I have classes, please start attending. And they started attending the classes. And in the first meeting between Srila Prabhupada and Howard, Prabhupada asked him, what is your occupation? And Howard said, my occupation is that I am an English professor in Ohio State University. Prabhupada's eyes lit up. He said, this is exactly what I wanted. I was looking for someone who can edit my manuscripts. I have a lot of manuscripts right now. I have the second canto, Nectar of Devotion, and so on. I wanted someone to take these manuscripts and edit them. So even in the first meeting, Prabhupada actually gave Howard an instruction to become his principal editor. So Howard became Hayagriva Das on September 9th, 1966. And he also became Srila Prabhupada's principal editor. Prabhupada has a lot of affection for him because he was the first person, first professor disciple, the principal editor, and so on. In 1969, something interesting happened. This was the time when New Vrindavan was flourishing, and Srila Prabhupada was looking for a temple president of New Vrindavan. So at that point, Hayagriva Prabhu knew that at some point he would be asked to take on that service of being the temple president, and he had no intention of becoming the temple president. So he had made a list of arguments that whenever Srila Prabhupada is going to ask me to become the temple president, I'm going to present these arguments and I'm not going to take up that service. So it so happened that one particular morning, Srila Prabhupada called Hayagriva and told him that I have a very important service for you. Hayagriva Prabhu was thinking, oh, I know what's coming. I know what's coming. Then Prabhupada said, I want you to take sannyas. As soon as Prabhupada said that, he was taken aback. He said, this is not what I was expecting. And then he started presenting arguments spontaneously, saying that I don't want to take sannyas because I have so many material attachments, I have relatives, I have families. The Prabhupada said, don't worry about all that, just chant Hare Krishna, everything will go away. Then he kept saying, no, I don't want to do it, I don't want to. Then he said, I'll do anything but not take sannyas. At that point, Srila Prabhupada said, become the temple president of New Vrindavan. So this is how he became the temple president of New Vrindavan. Not only that, in 1972, when Srila Prabhupada went to India, Hayagriva Prabhu also went along with Srila Prabhupada. And in the famous Radha Damodar lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave, Hayagriva Prabhu was in the audience. Now, after 1972, something interesting happened. A lot of the past conditionings of Hayagriva Prabhu came, and he kind of fell away from the movement. He was not able to follow the four regulative principles. He kind of moved away from ISKCON for a few years, actually. But Srila Prabhupada never forgot him. And it was only in 1976, when Srila Prabhupada was in Hawaii, that someone told Srila Prabhupada that your disciple Hayagriva is in Hawaii. Prabhupada immediately said, no matter what happens, please grab him and bring him to me. And then that is when the second meeting of Hayagriva Prabhu and Srila Prabhupada happened after a long period of time. And Hayagriva Prabhu, of course, at that point was wearing a pant and shirt. He was not wearing devotional clothes. He didn't have a tilak on. But still, as soon as he saw Srila Prabhupada, he touched Srila Prabhupada's feet and put it to his head. And immediately, Srila Prabhupada, out of affection for him, gave him a service again. He said that I have so many manuscripts now. Can you please edit them? You are my first editor. Hayagriva Prabhu happily took that service and started editing the manuscripts again. But after Srila Prabhupada left Hawaii, and after a few months, Hayagriva Prabhu again fell down. Again, his past conditionings came back so strongly this time that he had to completely leave everything, leave the movement, and so on. But till the end, it is said, even in November 1977, just before Srila Prabhupada passed away, he kept asking, where is Hayagriva? Where is Hayagriva? He asked Jayadvaita Swami, he asked Kirtananda Swami, where is Hayagriva? And then everybody was wondering, Prabhupada, he has gone away. Why worry about him? Prabhupada used to always say, he was there for me at the beginning. I'm always grateful to him. He was my first editor. I'm always grateful for whatever he has done for me. But unfortunately, Prabhupada did not meet him. And after Prabhupada's passing, after 12 years after Prabhupada's passing, in 1989, a devotee in Mumbai, Srinathji Prabhu, who some of you know, actually found Hayagriva Prabhu. So Hayagriva Prabhu was actually in a beach in Goa, and Srinathji Prabhu was told about it. So Srinathji Prabhu himself went to Goa in search of Hayagriva Prabhu, and he found Hayagriva Prabhu on the beach under a covered boat. He was just taking rest there. And then Srinathji Prabhu found him and he, are you Hayagriva? And he was very happy to see him. And then Hayagriva Prabhu said, I came here to enjoy, but I have this immense pain on my lower back. And then Srinathji Prabhu said, don't worry about the pain. I'll take you to Mumbai. I'll take you to the best doctors. We'll get it diagnosed. We'll get it treated and so on. And that's what happened. They took, Srinathji Prabhu took Hayagriva Prabhu to Bombay, and it was diagnosed that he had the cancer of the spine, and it was extremely painful. And he was also told that he has just a few weeks to live. So given this news, it was very devastating for Hayagriva Prabhu. And at that point, Srila Radhanath Swami met Hayagriva Prabhu, and he said, do you have any regrets? And Hayagriva Prabhu said, I have no regrets. I have no regrets that I have this cancer. I have no regrets that I'm having this pain. I have no regrets that I've become paralyzed from waist down. But I do have one regret though. The one regret that I have is that when I was youthful, when I was energetic, I did not give myself completely to Srila Prabhupada. I was carried away by temptations. That is the only regret I have. And then when Radhanath Swami asked him, do you have any desires? He said, if you remember, in 1969, Srila Prabhupada wanted me to take sannyas. At that point, I gave him so many arguments. But now, 20 years later, I want to do that for Srila Prabhupada. I want to accept sannyas. And everybody, all the devotees were wondering, now here is a devotee who's paralyzed from waist down. He's not able to even move. He's in so much pain. What would he do by taking sannyas? But still, because it was Hayagriva Prabhu's strong desire, and because it was Srila Prabhupada's desire in the first place, devotees decided to give him sannyas. And so Hayagriva Prabhu became Hayagriva Swami. So at that point, after the ceremony, Radhanath Swami recollects that he bought the sannyas danda and gave it to Hayagriva Prabhu. Hayagriva Prabhu held that sannyas danda, and through that sannyas danda, he was able to see Srila Prabhupada. And he hugged the sannyas danda and he started crying, he started weeping, and he said, Prabhupada, I'm so sorry. I just got carried away by these temptations. But still, Srila Prabhupada, I did one thing for you. You wanted me to take sannyas. I have taken the sannyas for you. And he cried out. And the next few weeks, he was completely Krishna conscious, completely attached to his guru. And whatever he did, even when he was eating, he wanted to hear Srila Prabhupada's lectures. When he was talking to anybody, he was talking about Srila Prabhupada. It was at that point that Satyaraj Prabhu met Hayagriva Prabhu. And he told Satyaraj Prabhu that I was touched by the hand of God through my guru. And in that mood, he left the world. And even the moments before he left the world, he raised his hands as if he was seeing Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada actually came and took him back home to the spiritual world. So this is a pastime which gives me a lot of hope about the Guru and Krishna's protection in our Krishna consciousness. So this particular pastime talks about the affection of Srila Prabhupada towards Hayagriva Prabhu and Hayagriva Prabhu's attachment to the spiritual master. Now that was at the level of the Guru. Now the last thing I want to talk about in the next 4 minutes is whenever we talk about material attachment, material relationships, the other extreme, at the ultimate sense, we talk about cutting the knots. And there are several verses. Bidyate hridaya granthis, chidyante sarva samshaya. So bidyate means to cut, and hridaya is heart, and granthis is knots. So this practice of Krishna consciousness talks about cutting those knots. So what does it mean? So, and then we also hear this verse from Rishabdev to his sons, Pumsam Striya Mituni Bhava Metam. The attachment that exists between the male and the female is like a knot, and this knot keeps growing, and Krishna consciousness helps you cut that knot. So what does this mean? So in the ultimate sense, all of these things are true. But in the immediate sense, we have to understand the relationship as if it is coming through Krishna. So now let's take this wonderful example of Bilvamangala Thakur, who actually was a pure devotee. And then I just want to explain very briefly the final moments before he left the world. So this beautiful relationship between Bilvamangala Thakur and Krishna. And it talks about ropes. And that is why I want to talk about this particular poem, which is a bhajan called Chorastakam, which we were all chanting in the Purushottam Mass that just passed. So this verse talks about the wonderful exchange between Bilvamangala Thakur and Krishna, where he says, you cut the terrible noose of Yamaraj, which happened in the case of Ajamil. He was able to cut the rope that Yamaraj came to take away Ajamil. You sever the dreadful noose of material existence and you slash everyone's material bondage, but you're unable to cut the knot fastened by your own loving devotees. So this is, and what happens is, there's a nice pastime that happens between Krishna and Bilvamangala Thakur, where Krishna wants Bilvamangala Thakur to ask him for some benediction, but Bilvamangala Thakur never asks Krishna for any benediction. And in the final stages of his life, Krishna arranges in such a way that Bilvamangala Thakur falls into a pit full of thorns. And at that point, at least Krishna thinks, okay, now he's going to ask me for some help. But even at that point, when Bilvamangala Thakur is in that pit of thorns, where turning here and there is actually causing him so much pain, he's still not asking Krishna for help. The Krishna says, okay, I must help him, even though he's not asking me for help. So Krishna pulls him out of that pit. And as soon as Bilvamangala Thakur touches the boy, he realizes that this is Krishna. And as soon as Krishna understands that Bilvamangala Thakur has understood that this is him, he immediately tries to run away. And then Bilvamangala Thakur starts laughing. Where are you running away, Krishna? Where are you running away? You can run away if you want, but I have captured you already. He says, O stealer of everything, today I have imprisoned you in the miserable prison house of my heart, which is very fearful due to the terrible darkness of my ignorance. And there, for a very long time, you will remain, receiving appropriate punishment for your crimes of thievery. So he's saying, you may run away, but you are in my heart, Krishna. You are in my heart, and nobody can take that away. I've imprisoned you in my heart. So then Krishna starts coming back towards Bilvamangala Thakur and says, okay, you have defeated me again, but tell me, how do I look? As we all know, Bilvamangala Thakur was blind, so he could not see Krishna. But he, through the vision of Krishna in his heart, he starts chanting these wonderful verses where he starts explaining how Krishna looks. And Krishna is amazed to understand that exactly what Bilvamangala Thakur is saying is exactly how Krishna looked at that point. And then again, Krishna accepts defeat. And he says, of course, this is the verse by Bilvamangala Thakur. He says, "O Krishna, thief of my everything, the noose of my devotion remaining forever tight, you will continue to reside in the prison house of my heart, because I will not release you for millions of years." As soon as Bilvamangala Thakur says this, then Krishna actually understands that this is a person who need not be in this world anymore, and then he takes him to the spiritual world. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Thank you, Gaur Kumar Prabhu. Already the chat box is exploding with appreciation for your class. It was so amazing, and it was especially the pastime of Hayagriva Prabhu, how you brought out with the concept that you were explaining. It is extremely touching and inspiring. So you actually made our day. So thank you so much for such a beautiful presentation. The darshan is open. However, if anybody has any comments or questions, feel free, you can share now. I hope everybody can unmute themselves. Just a minute, I'll do that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Gail Mataji?
Yeah, it's me. Like, I won't repeat what everybody else has said, because to not repeat. But yeah, I have a question or two, if you want to. When you were saying that, the love that we get through our bodily relationships is actually Krishna's love coming to us, right?
Yes.
So if we are to be consistent with that, maybe you know where I'm going already, but then why is it not correct to say that if we also receive, some envious, hateful, demonstration of some people, why should we not also, based on that, why should we not also say that that is Krishna's?
Yeah, excellent question, Gail. I've actually thought about this. And so one way to think about relationships is that we have to connect everything with Krishna, right? So if we are experiencing some envy, if we are experiencing some anger from somebody, of course, there are two ways of looking at it. That one way is that Krishna is actually purifying us. And the other way is that Krishna is actually showing us some of the things that are existing in our heart already. And if we look at it correctly, sometimes when we look at something bad in others, we actually have it in our heart. So that is one way of looking at it, and understanding that Krishna is doing this for me, for my own purification, for my own growth. So that is one way to connect everything that happens in our life with Krishna. And that is being Krishna conscious. Of course, it's very easy to say this. To practically implement this is difficult. Of course, this takes years and years of training. So that's my answer. I hope that answers, Gail.
Yes. It seems like even when we are on the receiving end of someone else's negativity, it's it's more like an indirect way of Krishna's loving us.
Yes,
It
yes.
sounds,
And
but
go ahead.
the two ways that you mentioned sounded a bit similar, because you said the first way was that it is Krishna purifying us, right?
Yes.
And the second way sounded also like purification, because it's his way of trying to show us what's in our heart. That also sounds like purification. So I'm not seeing the distinction between one and two.
I mean, it's probably the same thing. It's
Oh, okay.
both are purifications. Yes, it's just how we look at it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I had one other, but I don't know if somebody else wanted to also ask.
Okay.
Okay, time's up. My second question. Second question is, you were saying that we also offer our love to Krishna through our relationships, right? And so it's not always so obvious, how that is. Like, let's use your example of a mother nursing her infant child, right? It's obvious how the love for the child is coming through the mother's she did not have anything to do with the production of that, right? But how is the mother loving Krishna by giving the child her milk?
So you're talking about the other side, right? Other perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Towards the mother, right?
The mother giving love to Krishna by nursing the child.
Oh, I'm just talking about how Krishna through the mother gives the love, and how,
Right.
and how when we offer our love, we are offering that love. We should be in the consciousness of offering that love through that person to Krishna.
That's right. That's why I'm trying to understand in this example, how is the mother offering her love to Krishna through the child?
How is the mother offering? So that is, I'm not talking about that. I mean, it's just the relationship between the mother and the child, and how Krishna's love flows through the mother is the concept here. But what you're saying is, how can through that love, how can the mother understand that she is loving Krishna? Of course, if she sees the child as a connection to Krishna, then by offering that love, she can see the connection to Krishna through her love. I hope that makes sense.
I'm asking because you said it should go both ways.
Yes. So both ways, meaning the child also has to reciprocate that love by showing love towards the mother. So whenever the child is calling out to the mother, right? So then calling out to the mother, that love can be directed to Krishna. That is what I meant, both ways.
So you're saying that the child should, in calling out to the mother, the child is supposed to understand the mother's connection to Krishna, and understand that the real calling out is to Krishna,
right,
through the mother.
Of course, the child does not do that. The child just looks at the immediate or the vyavaharik. He does not look at the paramarthik. But ultimately, we, as we mature, we should start looking and training ourselves to see that.
Okay.
Maybe there's someone else who can give a more deeper purport.
No, I mean that was nice. I'm just trying to. What you hear is my trying to process, and also trying to really understand where our spontaneous affection for our bodily relation, kind of fits in that whole scenario, because it's not that you want to kind of negate the affection that you have on the bodily level either, since that's where we're at, I mean, that's what's more real for us rather than our relationship with Krishna. So it's not like we want to say, well, my affection for our bodily relationship doesn't really count or mean anything. So I'm just trying to also see how to, make that fit in.
It is very true. I mean, we always look at our immediate, because this person is giving me this happiness, so this is it. But what I'm saying is train your mind to look beyond it. Train your mind to look beyond it, that this person is here because of Krishna. This person is able to give this love because that love has been sanctioned as Paramatma in that person's heart. So that is, if we start doing that, if we start training ourselves in such a way, then we will be Krishna conscious all the time. And then these small things, the disappointments that happen because of bodily attachments will stop hurting us a lot.
Okay, I promise this is the last thing.
Yes.
So,
I don't know, do we have?
When we receive love from somebody, let's say the person isn't even Krishna conscious, right?
Yes.
To appreciate that love as coming from Krishna, when that person himself or herself
is not Krishna conscious.
Is not Krishna conscious, it seems like a bit of a disconnect there.
No, that's a very good question again. So the way that will help is we have to be in the mood of Krishna consciousness. It doesn't matter whether that person is in Krishna consciousness. I'll give you an example here. So Srila Prabhupada, of course, Krishna can help us directly, indirectly, or he can sometimes misdirect us also through some tests, right? So for example, in Srila Prabhupada's life, there's when he was Prabhupada was actually writing magazines initially and distributing magazines from restaurant to restaurant. There was someone who was apparently not Krishna conscious, someone who was totally, some stranger advised Srila Prabhupada that you're an old man. Why are you wasting time writing these magazines? Why don't you write books instead? And when Srila Prabhupada heard that, he took it as an instruction from Krishna himself. Right? Even though this person is not Krishna conscious, because Prabhupada was in the mood of being Krishna conscious, he took that instruction as if it's coming from Krishna. And that is what I'm saying, that we have to take everything that we are getting as if it is coming from Krishna. We have to train our mind in such a way, and that will help.
Yes, no, that I feel like is easy to do, that thing, Yeah. But when it comes to affection, to say that this affection is coming from Krishna because Krishna is the source of affection. When that person, he's not intentionally, just like in the example you gave, the person is not intentionally trying to do it on behalf of Krishna.
Yes.
But still, I don't know, somehow it's harder when it comes to the affection part to say that, Krishna is trying to give me affection, even though that person is not even aware of Krishna's existence.
That is exactly the point, right? So in this particular case, this person was not Krishna conscious at all, but still he took it as if it's coming from Krishna. And of course, it's easier said than done, because we tend to look at the immediate. Who's this person? Look at this person sitting in the corner. He's not in Krishna conscious, but he's giving me this advice. But if you're humble, receive that instruction as if it's coming from Krishna, then that instruction can be used for our own benefit.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I understand you, but like I said, when it comes to emotions, it doesn't, it's harder to absorb, that truth,
It's nice when you talk about emotions, Gail, because you're a rational person. So Buddha Bhava Samanvitaha, we have to combine the intelligence and the emotions. And then it is said the distance between the mind and the heart is all the journey that we have to do. We have to take it from our mind to our heart. And
like you said, easier said than done.
I'm far away from whatever I'm speaking. So
Well, thank you very, very, very much for taking so much time with me. I appreciate it. Yeah, and it was very helpful, very helpful. Thank you.
At one point, Athena had raised hands. I'm not sure if she is still available to ask the questions. And I'm not sure, Gaur Kumar, Prabhu getting too much time of yours.
I'm okay,
If
Prabhu.
Athena, you want to still ask, if Prabhu has time, you can ask. Otherwise, we can end here.
Well, Gaur Kumar, well, first, thank you so much for such a wonderful class. Do you have just a couple of, I'm just curious to get your feedback.
Please.
Well, at one point you had mentioned the three types, pro-devotional, and non-devotional, anti-devotional, and of course the absolute worst is the anti-devotional. And you do hear some devotees going through this where perhaps they've been married for a very long time, have children, and then finally they take to bhakti, but then their partners are very, very against it. And it's causing a lot of strain in their marriage, their relationship, and maybe their relationship with their kids or the partners. So I can theoretically, if I were like in their place, I would, pray to Krishna, feed them prasad, maybe listen like on my own, kirtan or lectures, be the best wife or husband. Those are tactics that I could think of. But I'd be curious to hear from you what maybe you have heard from your experiences with other devotees who've perhaps gone through this. What actually works? Because I'm saying one obviously avenue is divorce, but maybe that's not the best, or in the Vedic culture, I'm not sure. But what ways would you, I guess, handle this anti-devotional attitude from maybe your loved ones or people that you're very, very attached to materially, to, I guess, circumvent this very big problem?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Athena. So this is something that I've seen and heard devotees go through a lot. And I just want to share something that Radhanath Swami practically demonstrated in this particular regard. So there was this one Mataji whose husband was anti-devotional. And so she would go for Mangalarti every day, just leaving the child at home in the care of the husband. And then Radhanath Swami asked, "Where is your husband? Where is your child?" She said, "No, I wanted to attend Mangalarti and, attend the program." But then Maharaj immediately stopped her and said that, "No, you should go back home, take care of your husband and your child in such a nice way and be an exemplary person first. And seeing that, when your husband asks that, then he will start getting attraction towards Krishna." So that is one way. And the other way is, you actually mentioned it, by strong prayers. By praying, we can actually help the other person, our loved one, become Krishna conscious. And this I've seen many, many devotees' lives. Because of sincere prayers, Krishna has actually helped the loved ones become devotees or favorable towards devotional service. I hope it answers.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gaur Kumar. Thank you so much for taking extra time to answer all the questions. And thank you everyone on the call and those who also joined. Thank you everyone for making this morning very devotional and fruitful. Thank you, Gaur Kumar Prabhu. Honestly, it really made my day. It gave me so much inspiration.
As I said, whatever I'm saying is what I've heard from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu and other senior devotees. I have no realizations or anything in this matter. Thank you.